Hello, my name is Steve Snap with CloudArc, and today I'm going to walk you through the process that we use to conduct a Salesforce health check, and I'm going to talk about the reasons why we do a health check, and how you can use the findings that we generate during a health check to not only grow your business, but also reduce your risk in terms of costs and other things that are affecting your ability to succeed with Salesforce. So why a Salesforce health check? Well, number one, during the health check process, we want to clearly define the problems that you want to solve with Salesforce, both those long-term problems as well as those short-term problems. And if you have Salesforce today, what were the original problems that you set up to solve, and have you solved them? Second thing there is determine the lowest cost Salesforce license needed for your current level of usage. A lot of organizations we have found have a significant amount of Salesforce technology, maybe more than they need or more than they're using. And so one of the first things we're really looking for with a health check is to really optimize or align the current usage with the current technology need. Number three, we want to develop a short and long-term plan that reduces risk and enhances flexibility. And when we talk about risk here, we primarily mean cost, because the idea really is that many organizations have over-purchased technology. And there's a bunch of reasons for that, and I'll touch on some of those in the rest of the presentation. But we really want to look for ways to reduce the short-term costs and lay a foundation and a plan to create greater results in the future in the business. And usually those greater results can come from additional features that can be purchased when they're needed. And finally, we want a path to what we call 2x results. I'm going to talk about our results framework in just a few moments. And in that results framework, we have this concept that says, for every dollar that you spend in a total Salesforce or CRM solution, you should be generating at least $2 in return. So if I spend $1, I want to make sure I'm generating $2 in additional profit based on that investment. Okay, so based on that, what does the Salesforce health check process involve? It starts with a 30-minute phone call with you and your team and someone on our team. We then take the findings from that call and we process those internally. And from that, we deliver a free health check report. Okay, so during the call, what do we cover? And in a few minutes, I'm going to show you some screens in Salesforce and what we're looking for in Salesforce. But here I just want to give you an introduction of what it is we're looking for and why. So first thing is we want to discover and discuss the problems and opportunities that you're trying to solve for in your business. Now, I know I mentioned that a few minutes ago, but it's really, really important that we have a really good understanding of what we're trying to do. If we're trying to drive revenue, how do we do that? If we're trying to increase customer retention through better customer support, what is it that we're solving for? Then we want to review the Salesforce company information page inside of your Salesforce org, and we want to look at your current licenses and your expiration dates. And so what we're going to look for there is what licenses have you purchased from Salesforce, and when can you change those licenses based on the expiration date. Third, we're going to determine the Salesforce data that's currently in use. And an example I'll show you in just a minute is that, let's say, for example, I've purchased the Sales Cloud license. I'm going to use round numbers here. I'm spending about $2,000 per user per year for Sales Cloud. And then we go look at the data and we find that you're mostly using accounts and contacts and activities. Well, that's an example of you don't need Sales Cloud in that example. Or a variation of that is you're using opportunities, but you actually could use a custom object, which would mean you wouldn't need to spend $2,000 per user. You could spend something closer to $1,000. So these first three bullet points are really about understand what you're trying to solve for, what have you contractually signed up for, and what is your team actually using today. Fourth thing here is review the My Account for the current pricing level. And so one of the things that's really important to understand is you might have some really great pricing for Sales Cloud, for example, and you may not, there may be no value in changing, or you may understand that, hey, we're spending, 125, 150 per user per month for Sales Cloud, and we can get another license that meets what we're currently doing for a much lower price. So the final thing there is we want to identify the gaps between the licenses owned and the actual usage, and we want to quantify the immediate benefit for a risk or cost reduction for features. So what do we mean? Well, if you don't need features that you've currently paid for, and let's say you've had Salesforce for 2 years, good chance you're not going to use those features in the short term. So why pay for those features, and why continue to pay for something that you're not using? And that brings us to the results framework. So the health check is really about establishing, what do we need in the short term? How can we modify or change our license structure so that we're paying for what we actually use today? And then how do we lay that foundation for something in the future? And that brings me to the results framework. So this is a graphic or an image that we created to demonstrate a couple of concepts. The first thing I want to emphasize here is that successfully implementing Salesforce doesn't just mean buying the right license. It also means combining the Salesforce tool with your people and process. So another way that we say that is that successful Salesforce is optimizing Salesforce technology to make it easy for your people to execute the right process. Or put it another way, how do we use Salesforce to make it easy for people to do their job? So we always want to be looking at the technology part and the people and process part to make sure that these things are in balance. So you'll notice a couple things when you look at the image. The first thing is at the bottom, it says technology, that's Salesforce. And there's a horizontal scale there, and there's a dollar sign from left to right. Low dollars on the left, high dollars on the right. And then you'll notice on the right-hand and left-hand side, you have people and process. And the same idea, you've got a vertical scale, low dollars at the bottom, high dollars at the top. And the concept here is that if you're in low dollars for technology and low dollars for people and process, you're in the lower left-hand corner here, you haven't really spent a lot of money and you haven't really solved a lot of problems yet. On the other end of the extreme, if you've got all kinds of workflow and people and process and training and all these choices that you've made about how you're going to use Salesforce, and you're using an extensive, you're using the Salesforce catalog, the license catalog very extensively, then presumably you're on the upper right-hand corner of this where you've spent a lot of money on Salesforce licenses, you've spent a lot of money on your people and a lot of money on your process. So there's two extremes there. What we're trying to do with the framework is to locate where you are on the framework and what's next. Is the next thing to go buy another Salesforce license or to move into another Salesforce family of products? Or is the option to apply what you've paid for? Or maybe there's a need to reduce your license because your organization has a certain appetite for the amount of change that you absorb, and that's the way you're going to use the tool, so might as well align the technology with the way you're using it. Bunch of different variations in there. But the whole point of the framework is that it helps you understand that there's this relationship between people, process, and technology. There's a relationship with cost, and our main declaration that we make in this framework is that if you're spending $1 on this overall solution, you should be generating $2 in additional profit or some measurable return for your business. Now, what that 2x result sort of forces us to look at is if I'm spending $100,000 on Salesforce, am I generating $200,000 in result or value? And if I'm not, what am I generating? And if I'm only generating, let's say, 100,000 in result and I'm spending 100, can I dial my spending down closer to 50 so I'm in that 2x range again? So again, it's not a perfect system, but the point is, if you're spending $100,000 to use Salesforce and you're getting $100,000 of value, something is out of alignment. And that's really what we're trying to say there with that metric. So how do we kind of use this to navigate? Well, what you'll notice at the bottom of the screen is also different Salesforce license categories. Most of us that are on this call and most of our customers, they know what Sales and Service Cloud are. And as I said earlier, that license generally costs around $2,000 per user per year. It's a little bit closer to $1,600, but different people have different prices, so I use 2,000 as a round number. Well, if you're really low down here, if you're spending $2,000 per user per year, but you're not using basic features in Salesforce, or you're really just using accounts and contacts and some activities. Maybe you're using Salesforce to capture email in these account contact records, or maybe you're using the opportunity, but you're using it in this very basic way. Well, there might be a possibility that you change your license and you move back down the technology price scale to something that's a better fit for what you're using. So a lot of our customers end up using Salesforce Platform because their basic usage is accounts and contacts with activities, and they use the opportunity screen in a very basic way that could be handled with a custom object. And so in that example, Platform is a great candidate for those customers, and Platform is right around $1,000 per user per year. Okay, so what we're really talking about there is how do we navigate that process, and where are you located on that map? Now, once you optimize your licenses for what you're currently using, then you can start to decide or map your way up through the framework to additional capabilities or additional solutions in the business that may push you further out on that technology scale, which means as you need more, you spend more. So that's really what the result framework is about. So after we do this call with you, we will generate a health check report. And that health check report really is about recommendations and actions. And so the goal there in many of these health check reports is to identify immediate cost reductions if appropriate. Again, the whole idea of 2X is if you're getting a certain result, then you want to make sure that, if you can reduce your expenses to maintain that same result, let's do it. So the goal there is how do we find those adjustments if there are any. The second thing there is the short-term actions to optimize for business results. So in the framework, we talk about this concept of foundations, which is in any one of these Salesforce licenses, there are core capabilities that those licenses enable you to do. And without a lot of customization and a lot of extra effort, you usually can use some kind of basic training to align your people around those core capabilities to solve those specific business problems. And so we want to identify what are those short-term actions that will optimize for business results. Third, we want longer-term opportunities based on business needs. So yeah, maybe we're going to use basic accounts and basic activities, to capture certain key metrics, but eventually we want to integrate more with, quoting or other things that enable us to be more effective. So we want to define those longer-term opportunities based on business needs. Fourth, we want to identify immediate training opportunities. So again, is there low-hanging fruit available if we just simply standardize the way that everybody's doing things and get everybody on the same page? And this is the final point that we made, is that implementation of foundation concepts around just sort of those core capabilities in Salesforce. Now, what we find from a lot of our clients is that out of this health check process, what we're really hoping to achieve and what clients are hoping to see value from is that most companies or most customers have spent more money than they're generating value from, or they own more than they use. And there's a couple reasons for this. One, there's this decoupling of the consulting efforts that go into implementing Salesforce and the people that sell it. So the direct team is compensated based on how many licenses they get you to sell, they get you to buy in whatever contract term that you're working on. And the consulting part of this, the part where the consultant meets with you to really understand your problems and then solve it, they're constrained in many ways because most of the dollars go to the license. So most customers own way more technology than they need, and they've used most of those dollars to buy the technology, and they don't necessarily have the resources left over to really implement it in a way that would make it successful. And that could either be they don't have the resources to hire additional people, or they don't have dollars to spend on the subject matter experts who can help implement. Secondly, the health check helps to cut costs in the short term and expand value and usage in the long term. So again, let's bring those costs down better in alignment with what you're currently using, and then use those dollars that have been recouped potentially for additional investments into the longer term solution that you're working for. The third thing that we see, we can generally identify ways for customers to reduce their Salesforce license costs up to 25%. So in the example I shared earlier, let's say you have 50 users and you're using Sales Cloud at $2,000 per user per year. And we go in this health check and we look and, oh, you're using accounts and contacts, you are using opportunities, and that object does require you to use Sales Cloud. But when we examine an opportunity, we realize that you're using it in its generic way. You have a project name or an opportunity name, you have a close date, you have a status, you have a dollar amount. Those are 4 fields. Well, if you know anything about Salesforce, to create a custom object that does those 4 things would take about 15 minutes. So you've purchased Sales Cloud with the idea that you're going to use all those features, but you're really just using opportunity in this very basic way. Why continue to spend $2,000 for that when Salesforce platform with a custom object would do that same thing for $1,000? So again, 50 users times 2,000 is 100. 50 times 1,000 is 50. So now you've reduced your cost down to 50,000. So in that example, it was a 50% savings. But there's other expenses in there. You're going to do some training, whatever. So the point is you now dial this down to something that will enable you to better align with what you're doing. And finally, in that health check, we provide additional recommendations to reduce your overall business risk based on how you use Salesforce. So again, what other problems can we solve? How do we make decisions on which features we're going to use in Salesforce? What training curriculum do we develop to reinforce for our team? This is how we use Salesforce at our company. And then what dashboards have we built so that managers can reinforce on a weekly basis, hey, this is how we record activities, or this is how we, capture these opportunities in this custom object. And so how do you use those dashboards so that managers and team leaders can reinforce those decisions over time? So that's the outcome of a sales check, of a health check. So this leads into a quick discussion about CloudArc and who we are and a little bit about our philosophy. So as I started, when I started the meeting, I mentioned that, or when I went over the results framework, I mentioned that successful Salesforce means balancing people, process, and technology. It's not just buying a product, but it's taking that product, deciding how your people are going to use it to make those processes easier to execute. And so there's this focus on balancing that and really understanding, hey, maybe we don't use Salesforce for this one problem. Maybe we use Word, or maybe we're using, some other mechanism, Trello, whatever. How do we use these tools to affect the result that we want? Second big idea is license only what's needed today. You can always buy more later when you clearly understand the need. Most people buy more of Salesforce when they don't really understand how they're going to use it, and then they're locked into those decisions they made when they weren't very clear. The third point here to our philosophy is that more is less. You could always add technology back at any time. Very rarely do you get value for getting pricing discounts in the short term. So if you're buying extra licenses or you're buying a higher license than you need because you're getting some discount, you're not really getting value for that. You're better off, no discounts, buy what you need today only, and then as you grow and as your needs are clear, you buy more. So again, you can always add technology back later, but you can't unadd technology, you can't reduce. So it's better to keep your foundation super lean and light at the beginning. Next point is optimize the fundamentals in Salesforce through decisions and training. And what we mean there is when you're looking at how you're going to solve a particular process, you make decisions on how we're going to use Salesforce. We got this pick list, and when people record this activity and they use that subject and they select that this is a consulting meeting, for example, those decisions are then how the data gets populated and how the dashboards get populated. So you want to optimize for those fundamental features in Salesforce by making clear decisions on how you're going to use Salesforce, and then provide clarity around training. And then, like I said a few minutes ago, management will then, and leaders will then reinforce those decisions and those training through weekly or bi-monthly meetings. And finally, what result are you generating? Focus on $2 of result for $1 of investment. Be clear about this is an investment. It needs to produce a result. If it isn't producing a result, or it is producing a nominal result, then reduce your costs so that that result is a profitable one. Now, let me mention a little bit about our team at CloudArc. So at CloudArc, we've been implementing Salesforce really since before Salesforce existed. We've had a long history of working with CRM products, and obviously we joined Salesforce and became one of their partners early on in the Salesforce history. But recently, we were added to a new program that Salesforce has called the Outsourced Service Provider Program, or OSP. And we joined that, or actually we were asked to join that program this year. And so we were hand selected to join the OSP program. The reason the OSP program was created was Salesforce recognizes that many of their customers are frustrated because the dollars they're spending and the results they're spending aren't aligned. So they hand selected us because of our results framework. They also chose us for our deep technical knowledge of Salesforce, our sort of diverse industry experience, and our business experience. And their goal is they want to enable a select group of partners to allow customers to purchase licenses and consulting and support from one partner. And the idea is that that partner then has a full view or a really deep understanding of what problem the customer is trying to solve for and can help optimize the right license. Now, Salesforce doesn't want to lose revenue, but they recognize that if they've got customers that are out of alignment, those customers will eventually leave Salesforce anyway. And so Salesforce leadership created the OSP program to prevent that from happening. So as I mentioned, as part of the OSP program, we are uniquely qualified to recommend and bundle licenses, consulting, and support. And because we are under the OSP program, we are not incentivized by any quarterly goals or quotas. And so we focus on customer short and long-term results. Our customers stay with us. They find us and stay with us because we're generating results and we're helping to reduce their risk. They aren't staying with us because we have some new sales tactic. Finally, the other reason that clients work with us is when a client chooses to work with us under the OSP program, they no longer have to deal with the direct sales team, which has a completely different set of incentives than what I've just talked about. And finally, we have more than 20 years of onshore architectural experience and offshore development resources to help you optimize your Salesforce. So what's the next step? Well, there's a couple things that you can do next to move forward. Thank you for joining this webinar. But the second thing that you can do is that you can go to cloudarc.com, and on our website is a link to the CRM health check. You can click that button, you can schedule that 30-minute health check. And from that health check, we'll do all the things that we've talked about. You can also go to cloudarc.com and use the website. If you're not ready for the health check step, then visit our website and visit our YouTube channel where we've got lots of resources that walk through these concepts of how you can use Salesforce. Now, I said a minute ago that I would show you some of the things that we're looking for in Salesforce. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, but I wanted to just make a couple quick comments before I dove into Salesforce. I went into setup and I went into company info, just type that in there. And so it brings me to this option. And when I click on that, it brings me into this page. What I'm looking for here are a couple of things. The first one is, and I'll go ahead and expand this a little bit, is I want to look at the licenses that are enabled in this Salesforce org. Now I'm doing this because in a few minutes I'm going to go look at how the data is being used. But right away, this tells me what licenses are being used by the organization. So I want to see the licenses, I want to see the expiration dates, I want to look at the data, and I want to look at the, the pricing that you have, the contract that you have. Those are really the four things that we're looking for. So in this case, I can see that this org has Salesforce, which this is your Sales Cloud or Service Cloud license. This also, this org has platform in it. And I want to make a quick comment here because I didn't in the early part of the webinar talk about the difference between Salesforce and Salesforce platform. So the Salesforce license that you see here is what most of you know as Sales Cloud and Service Cloud. What most people don't realize is there's another license called platform. And you can think of platform as the core capability of Salesforce. It's accounts, it's contacts, it's reports, it's dashboards. It's, list views, all the core things that make Salesforce so unique. The ability to set up users and, add them and those kinds of things. That's all part of that core platform. Then Salesforce layers on top of that what they call the Sales and Service Clouds. And so the Sales Cloud is platform with a couple of sales-related generic objects. And those generic sales objects are leads and opportunities primarily. There's a little bit around campaigns. So what we're looking for when we go look at the data is, hey, are you using those generic sales features to their fullest extent? And if you're not, maybe platform would work for you. You wouldn't have to change Salesforce. You keep all your users. You just purchase a different license that's less expensive and that saves you money in the short term. And in most of our situations, we can save customers immediate money by simply switching their license to a license that better fits what they're doing. So we're looking to see what the customer has in terms of licenses, but we're also looking at this key date. So in this example, the expiration date on this org is September 10th, 2024. So I'm recording this on October, so basically 11 months away. The reason that date's important is because if you're going to make any adjustments to your licenses, you have to do it when you're in a renewal period. Now, Salesforce will always let you buy more. So if you have Sales Cloud and you've got 50 users and you want to buy another 5, you can always add onto what you have. But if you ever want to reduce the number of licenses or reduce or change the license, you have to do it in that renewal period. One thing that a lot of people don't realize, though, is that the renewal period automatically renews 30 days before the expiration date. So in this example, this org will automatically renew on August 10th, 2024. So we want to know that date, because if we find an opportunity to make some changes, we have to make those changes within a certain period of time. We have to let Salesforce know in writing 30 days before the expiration date that we want to make changes. So if you're looking at this today and it's October 2023 and your renewal, your expiration date rather, is November 2023, you need to move quick. So it's good to know that date so that you can make decisions on how you want to make changes. The second thing to mention is that we want to then look at the data that we're using, because our assumption is that most customers have paid for tools they're not using. So what are they using? And so from this page, if you go into the used data space and you click on this link here, it will show you what objects you're using. Now, we don't know how you're using them. We can go look at that, but this just gives us an indication. So in this example, this customer has Sales Cloud and they have a platform. But when we take a further look, we don't really see any of those generic sales objects that force you into Sales Cloud. I don't see really any usage of opportunities or leads here. They have a little bit of leads, but that's 4 leads. That's like demo data or something. So when we look at this, we see, wow, they're using core capabilities that are in platform. They're not using opportunities. So in this example, this would be a perfect example of a customer that would almost without any question benefit from platform. Now, they might have opportunities here, and for many of you watching this, you probably have leads or opportunities or cases. The question is, how are you using those features? And are you using them in such a way that you're generating enough value by staying with Sales Cloud? And like I said, a lot of companies don't. So in those situations, we're going to go look at those objects and see how the usage is. We're going to look at an opportunity. Does it have a ton of custom fields? And if you're using a lot of the standard features, do you have to keep it that way? Now, I mentioned you might have a lot of custom fields, but what I really meant to say is if you're using a lot of the generic features and you're totally embedded around that, you might have custom fields, but if you've added those custom fields to a generic object, you probably didn't have to do that. You could have added it to a custom object and locked yourself into a platform solution rather than a Sales Cloud solution. So what I mean there is, if I took a generic object and added all my own stuff anyway, Well, why use a generic object that you have to pay an extra $1,000 a year for? Just add that customization to a platform, a custom object, and save yourself money. We can go through a lot of those nuances during the health check process, but I want you to know there is a thought process there that we can follow. So I said at the beginning that when we do a health check, we're looking at the company info page for licenses and expiration dates. We're looking at data. We're looking at how the data is used. And then we're looking at what I call the shopping cart or the My Account page. What are you paying for your licenses? Did you get some sweetheart pricing? Are you paying, $150 or $180 per user per month? And what would a change in license type offer you? So that's a quick overview, but as I said, the goal there was to simply give you an idea of what are we looking for in a health check, what are we solving for, and how do we solve it. So with that, I'd like to just say thank you again for joining us. If you'd like to go ahead and schedule a health check, you can go to cloudarc.com, click the health check button, and on that page, you'll see a button to schedule the free health check. And we look forward to meeting you and talking with you and seeing if we can help create some short-term savings and some longer-term results. Thank you. See you soon.